Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Rick Oakes, and I have a few other people here with me to help present this session, COP202, What's New in AWS Optimization. I lead the product management team for AWS Optimization tools, including Compute Optimizer, Cost Optimization Hub, Savings Plan Analyzer, Savings Plan Recommendations, and I know I'm probably missing some. And I also sit on the FinOps Foundation Technical Advisory Council, helping AWS represent how customers optimize and operate with financial management. Bonnie?
Bonnie Fernstal, I lead Delta Airlines Central FinOps team.
Mary Nachimov, I lead the Savings Plan Purchase Experience.
Thank you. All right, so we have a lot of stuff to get through today, and we're really excited to have you all here. Just before we dive into any sort of specific content, I'm curious, how many of you folks are here from FinOps organizations? Show of hands. Awesome, that's great. How many are maybe more FinOps adjacent, maybe engineering leaders or engineering folks? Okay, so it's about actually fairly split. That's awesome. Okay, so how many of you have, before I dive into specific features and announcements, how many of you have used some of our AWS optimization tooling, such as Compute Optimizer? Awesome, that's great to see. Okay, we've got some new things in Compute Optimizer to show you. How many of you have made savings plan purchases with our recommendations or analyzer tooling? Wow, we've got a lot of optimization aficionados in the crowd. Cool. Okay, so first on the agenda, we've got some new features that we'll talk about. We're going to talk first about EBS optimization. How many of you heard of this new launch? We just launched it about a week ago, right before Thanksgiving. No? Okay, you're going to love it. So in Compute Optimizer, we offer recommendations for those of you that haven't used it yet, recommendations for rightsizing, modernization, idle detection, and cleanup for things like EC2, EBS, RDS, and quite a few other services. Inside Compute Optimizer, we kept hearing from customers, I like these recommendations, but there's so many of them. You keep giving me more. It's really hard to get after the ones I already have, and you keep launching more, so help us take them. And it's great feedback. We love building and launching new capability here. So optimization has been pretty high on our priority list for a while now. We decided to focus on the low-hanging fruit, easy-to-do optimizations to get started here. In this case, EBS idle cleanup, which is EBS volumes that are unattached to any instance and are really not adding any value to your environment. So we have optimization that will automatically snapshot those unattached volumes and delete them for you, and maybe even add tags if you wish as well. We also will automate the upgrade of volumes, and that means moving from GP2 to GP3 for a 20% cost improvement, or moving from IO1 to IO2 for resiliency improvements. And so this optimization capability allows you to apply these recommendations in your environment automatically. You can apply them immediately by selecting them and hitting execute or implement, or you can create a policy which will allow you to schedule the cleanups and do it repeatedly over time to keep your environment clean. We're really excited about this because as we were talking to customers, there's a lot of these volumes to go clean up, and we understand that the scale problem took a lot of time from FinOps teams and engineering teams, and so this will allow you to set up these automation rules and move on to other more interesting or impactful things where cleaning up storage volumes isn't always the most fun and engaging. So a little bit more details. Here's a screenshot of our console. I'll also go through a demo here in a minute. You'll be able to see the recommendations that are applicable for automation. You can multi-select and click the little review and apply button right there in the top and save money immediately. And I hope before the end of the week, maybe open up your laptop, take a look at this, maybe try a few, and start saving money right away. My hope is that at the end of reInvent, you've all saved a little bit of money with these optimization tools. You can also create these automation rules. Now, automation rules are very flexible. You can create an automation rule for your entire payer account and organization. You can create an automation rule for a subset of accounts, say non-production with different rules or configurations, or maybe an individual linked account as well. So you can kind of scope out and figure out what specific scope or organization or team is okay with execution of automation of recommendations and create rules just for them. You can also add criteria to the automation. How many of you have tags for environment, like production and non-production and these environment variables? Awesome. So if you want, you can create an automation rule that applies only to certain tag combinations. And you can even select multiple different tag combinations or set rule criteria based on region, capacity, or quite a few other options as well. Lastly, you can set a schedule. If your organization likes to make changes in your environment in downtime windows or maintenance windows, you can select a window for these recommendations to implement, which allows you to target those maintenance windows, even though the recommendations that we have for you with automation have no downtime or no necessary impact. We understand a lot of organizations still do have change control windows that they would like to respect. Lastly, once you take the recommendations, do we have a question? Sure, I'd take a question.
Can you do that across all accounts or within each account?
You can do it either across accounts or in an individual account, and I'll show that in the demo as well. Tracking results. Once you have implemented recommendations, you can look at how many were implemented and how much savings that you've accomplished or achieved from taking these recommendations. Now, this graph is basically a sum of the monthly potential savings. We're not tracking it month over month and accruing it over time. This is just a very simple sum of that potential savings metric. One of the most important parts of how we automate optimization is safety nets. Engineering teams do not want to get called at 2 in the morning because of incidents or outages or issues. So we've built a lot of these safety nets into the automation pipeline to help protect from any sort of impact. You can roll back any recommendation that you've implemented for up to 1 year after the automation has been implemented. So because we automatically take a snapshot of a volume before we make a change on it, we have that snapshot available to use in a rollback event for 1 year. We also have other safety nets. We automatically check if the reason why the volume was marked as unattached is still true before we implement the recommendation. So there's another safety net, and if it fails that check of still being unattached, then the automation will be marked as failed. And anytime you have a failed automation, it will make sure to not implement the recommendation, thereby leaving you in a healthy state. So before we get to the next one, I'm going to switch over here to my laptop, and we're going to demo this automation feature. So those of you familiar with Compute Optimizer, this should be a screen that you're used to. And the new thing here is on the left side of the screen, you'll see an automation section. I'm going to go ahead and click on recommended actions. These are the recommendations that are eligible for automation. In this case, we have 2 recommendation types: snapshot and delete unattached EBS volumes, and upgrade EBS volumes. In this case, I have some GP2 to GP3 volumes that need to be upgraded, and I can see the estimated savings for each one of these, and I can see exactly what recommendation type I have. I can multi-select some of these recommendations, and at the top of the screen, it'll tell me how much money I'll save per month by taking these recommendations, and I can click Review and Apply. So you can save money that quickly. How many clicks was that? Like 4, 5? So the idea here is to make optimization very easy for everybody to implement. And if you have some environments that just have a lot of aged EBS volumes and you want to just clean them up right now, this is a great option. If you have a lot of accounts or you want automated or recurring implementation of automation, you can create an automation rule. Now, you can create an automation rule at the organization level or at a linked account level, and you get to choose which ones get implemented first. So you can kind of set priorities here on if you want an individual team to run their own automation, or if maybe you have a central FinOps team that manages optimization for everybody, you'll have the ability to have sort of organizational level automation rules. Well, let's save questions to the end, thank you. So once I look at these automation rule options, I can create this automation rule, and I'm just going to create an organizational rule and select my linked account in my org. And I can choose which recommendation types I would like to apply in this policy. Then I'm going to add some rule criteria. In this case, we talked about tags. Let's say I have an environment tag, and say I want the value to be development. How many of you have had tags where some of them are capitalized and some of them are lowercase? Okay, a lot of nods. Okay, so I'm going to type in capital D development, and so you can have multiple tag values here in your criteria to catch it all. And then you can also add additional criteria. So say if I have maybe estimated savings or volume type criteria, you can add that here as well and really customize your automation rules. There, you can do ORs by creating additional criteria and picking tag again. So you can do and or ORs. Now, once you've selected your criteria, you'll get a refreshable list of the volumes that match your criteria. In this case, I actually don't have environment tags, but you'll see the list of all of the volumes that apply to the criteria that you've selected and the estimated savings for those recommendations. And then you can set your schedule. In this case, you can set midnight on Saturday or something like that, and you can set it to run for however many hours you have your window. Note, 100 recommendations will be implemented at a time, and they can take a variable amount of time depending on the size of the volume. So just note, if you have a lot of very large volumes, they'll be a little bit slower to implement. And implementation will stop beginning as soon as the window completes. You can also add new tags to the newly changed resources. So this is great because you can tag something as optimized. I've already optimized it. And this allows you to understand how many resources you've optimized later on, or use those tags for other FinOps purposes. You name your rule, and then you can set the rule as active or inactive if you'd like to save it for later. And once you implement this group, you'll be able to go into Compute Optimizer Automation Events and look at the historical number of recommendations implemented and the amount of savings. You'll see any recommendations that completed, or if they failed and then rolled back, and you can see those by month, and then you can see the savings by month as well. So that's automation. If you have any questions on this feature, we will definitely be available after the session to answer questions. We also have a blog post and a lot of great content online to help. Next up, we have a new recommendation for you in Compute Optimizer. How many of you have NAT gateway usage in your environment? Okay, understanding if a NAT gateway is being well utilized or not is a complex task. One of the things that we understand is a lot of customers run NAT gateways, but they're designed to be failover or backup NAT gateways in case something happens. So we designed a new recommendation to detect idle NAT gateways, and we look at 30 days of historical utilization, and we also look at if the NAT gateway is referenced in a route table or associated with the route table. What that means is we check to see if it's a failover or backup, not just if it has zero utilization. This means we know that there's no route table association and there's no usage, so this is a great opportunity for you to talk to the network team and go figure out if this NAT gateway is left behind and really needed or not. Once you view a NAT gateway recommendation in Compute Optimizer, you'll see them populate in the idle recommendation list, and then you will be able to click into it and see the utilization details that validates that this NAT gateway is not being consumed and maybe an option for you to clean up. Next up, cloud optimization efficiency. We, in the Cost Optimization Hub, launched a brand new metric that we're really excited about. We heard from a lot of customers that there's not very many metrics or KPIs for optimization success. In the FinOps space, we have a lot of cost visibility KPIs, but the optimization space is kind of lagged behind on a maturity curve a little bit. There are some metrics that we've heard from customers like effective savings rate, average CPU utilization, but they only show part of the puzzle. Effective savings rate, if you optimize it very well, will push commitments really high, but then maybe block you from right-sizing or cleaning up idle. The same with resource optimization. If you only optimize resources, you may be leaving commitments on the table. So we wanted to come up with a new metric that equally measures and balances the value of right-sizing and resource optimization with commitment optimization. We heard from a lot of customers that they've tried to make metrics on their own, convincing leadership of the value of the metrics, and coming to a common agreement on the definition is very challenging. So we wanted to make an attempt at this. So we created the cost efficiency metric in the Cost Optimization Hub product. This is available today for you. We launched it about a week and a half ago. And this metric is automatically generated and populated with 90 days of daily historical granularity in Cost Optimization Hub. This will allow you to set targets and benchmark your cost efficiency over time, and ideally save more money by helping convince leadership that efficiency is a very important investment for your organization. Here's what it looks like. In the Cost Optimization Hub, you'll see a brand new graph on the right side. It is your cost efficiency. In this case, my environment is very inefficient because it's a demo account. You'll see it trended over 90 days, so you can see as you're building new resources, are they efficient and effective, or maybe new resources are not so efficient and you're seeing the number drop. This is a great way to talk to individual resource owners or account owners. Maybe some resource and account owners have really great efficiency and maybe have some stories to tell about how they were able to do that. And you can do a little bit of culture work and knowledge sharing with teams that are really good at optimization, with teams that maybe need more help. So let's talk a little bit about how efficiency metric works. We take the total potential savings of all of our recommendations in Cost Optimization Hub. Compute Optimizer recommendations, right size, idle, RI, savings plan recommendations. We combine them all together. We deduplicate the savings, so we don't overstate savings, meaning if there's a bunch of idle resources, we won't tell you to buy a savings plan for them, for example. We take that number and we divide it by the total potential optimizable spend. What that means is we take some things out of this number, like credits, fees, support costs, things that we can't optimize. So we have a more stable baseline amount of spend that is optimizable that we provide recommendations for. Then we divide 1 by 2 and we have a percentage. In this case, if you have maybe $10,000 of potential savings on an account with $100,000 of optimizable spend, your efficiency is 90%. The idea is to make this very easy to explain to leadership, and every single individual percentage point of efficiency relates to a real dollar value that is on your invoice. So driving this metric up will be an actual real business impact to your cost. You will be able to look at the metric by account, by region, and you can look at top 5 highest efficiency, lowest 5 efficiency, and again, you can look at specific date ranges as well. If you had very specific moments in time where a savings plan expired or you bought a new savings plan and your efficiency took a drastic change, you'll be able to zoom in on that and understand how are the activities you're doing today in your FinOps practice will influence your overall efficiency. Thank you all so much. I'm going to invite Bonnie up from Delta to tell her story about how they use Compute Optimizer to optimize their estate. And I really appreciate all you attending. If you have questions on these new features, we'll be available afterwards. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks so much, Rick. I know personally I'm most excited about the efficiency metric. It had been part of my 2026 roadmap, so I've got one done now, right? So when I stepped into my role, Delta was about 3 years into a massive cloud migration program. An early FinOps practice had been established, mostly focused on showback, with a little bit of purchase commitment as well. FinOps became a hot topic for us for the same reason I imagine it has for most of you. Our cloud bill was growing rapidly, and we needed levers to pull to rein it in. Now, at this point, all of my FinOps knowledge came from a web search I did prior to accepting my position, so I had no idea what those levers would be. Luckily for me, Compute Optimizer had a set ready to go. Getting people to adopt those optimizations in an organization our size has definitely been a journey. We learned a lot about the gap between intent and reality, turned to automation to help along the way, and ultimately ended up achieving measurable change. So today I'll share a little bit of that journey with you. I'm a product person by trade, so when I first saw the recommendations, to me it looked like a large number of stories that needed to be written, refined, assigned, and worked by a large number of teams. Those stories and the desire to reduce our cloud costs predated me, so it was pretty obvious that my job was to figure out how to turn those opportunities into reality. So I started, as I think a lot of people with my background would, with the 5 Ws. Where were people supposed to be picking up the work from? Developers log into their accounts daily, but the people managing the backlogs don't, and they need a central place to go to see all the recommendations across the 1,200 account ecosystem we have. Who was supposed to be performing the work? If we were going to ask these busy teams to put even more work into their backlogs, we couldn't be asking them to also figure out which work was theirs, nor could we establish any sort of accountability mechanisms without that information. What was the work? I went in with the assumption that even though I may not personally understand the optimization opportunity, the teams performing the work would. But as I mentioned, we were in the middle of a migration journey, and for many of our developers, the cloud was just as new to them as it was to me. When was the work going to get done? As an organization, we had quite a few priorities, and we were going to have to figure out how to get the visibility to move up the ladder if we wanted the work to get done. And then finally, why? The work was there, the desire was there, so why wasn't it getting done? This probably sounds pretty familiar, as I found it echoes some of the key findings in the 2025 State of FinOps report by the FinOps Foundation. Competing priorities, lack of accountability, and lack of understanding are challenges that a lot of us are facing. We decided to start by tackling where and who through the creation of the Opportunity Dashboard. The recommendations are centralized in a single database, and then enriched with organizational context, like leader or application name, to provide clear lines of ownership. Then the report's broken down into 2 levels. The summary report lets you view, across both teams and opportunities, where the greatest savings lie. So whether you own a single application or an entire development organization, you can quickly filter and see where your team's efforts can best be spent. Then each opportunity has a detail report, and that's really more relevant to the people performing the work. You can see at a resource level things like what account the resource is in, what the actual savings estimate for that particular resource is, and usage metrics that can be helpful in understanding why the recommendation was made. Then to help with the understanding of what, each opportunity has its own opportunity runbook. This runbook takes, in a 5-minute or less read, all of the essential points that you need to understand, validate, and implement an opportunity. This is to help with capacity constraints. The FinOps team has the time and, frankly, the mandate to go deep dive into these opportunities and understand what they are and their implications. So by consolidating that information into a Cliff Notes version, you can enable your developers to spend less time reading and more time optimizing. I'm going to pause here and touch on our tagging strategy. While I can't take any credit for it, I think it's really lightweight from a maintenance perspective and results in a high quality of data, so it's worth a mention. Instead of requiring teams to maintain a bunch of tags on each resource, we use a 10-character code and a primary key that represents the business capability the technology supports. The reason this works so well is that while the exact functionality or the ownership is likely to change over time, that core business capability generally does not. Each code gets registered in a central architecture repository, so teams have a single place to go to keep that contextual information that we're so reliant on up to date. So I don't know if any of you have experienced what I did. We have foundational reporting now where you can go into a room of leaders and talk about the savings opportunities you found, and watch the dollars roll off the cloud bill in their eyes. It's fantastic, until you realize that not all opportunities can be turned into savings. Early on, I had to roll back some pretty big numbers I'd reported on after the teams told me that the opportunities wouldn't stay valid for long due to upcoming changes in usage patterns. Now, there was nothing wrong with the recommendation. It was accurate. So the key learning here is that teams have critical information about plane changes, about their roadmaps, and if you want to present an accurate picture of savings, you have to incorporate that. So with that, our dashboard changed from purely a reporting mechanism to also incorporate a decision from the teams. Were they going to implement or reject an opportunity? Or did they need to test in a lower environment prior to deciding? If they chose to reject it, they also had to provide a justification, and that was to allow us a starting point for conversations later if teams were rejecting opportunities that stayed valid, maybe just based on a lack of understanding. So with this information, you can now go in and talk about the savings that your teams have said they will implement. I did that. And then I went in the next month and the next month and talked about many of the same opportunities and many of the same numbers. And our leaders started asking one of the same questions I started with. When is this going to happen? That led us to add our final two decision points: a timeline for implementation, and then a reason for delay if the recommendation was expected to stay idle for more than 30 days. Now you have a system that provides clear line of sight into those 5 Ws. Each week, the recommendations get refreshed, and depending on their change in state, if they still exist, they roll up into one of 3 reports. Unactioned opportunities are rolled up by justification and timeline. This is to provide insight into the cost opportunity of prioritizing other work. Rejected opportunities go into a validation report. If teams are rejecting opportunities that continue to show up week after week, there should be sign-off that those are costs that our organization is willing to carry. The fun one is implemented opportunities go into the track savings report. For this one, we baseline the cost of the resource the month before the optimization is performed, and we compare that to subsequent month costs, which allows us to track savings even if a team's account or environment or system is still growing. So what this transparency and the conversations that we had after it showed to us was that we had a fundamental misalignment between team and leader timelines for implementing these changes. Leaders wanted the savings now. Teams agreed to implement the savings. But we still had teams migrating workloads. We still had traffic coming in. The business certainly hadn't stopped asking for new capabilities. And teams knew that this was important, but it just wasn't translating to those stories getting committed. So my team turned to automation. If we knew they were okay with it and they just couldn't get to it, we could automate some of that implementation work and let them focus on those other efforts. We started at one of the same places the Compute Optimizer team did, cleaning up unattached EBS volumes. We chose this for a number of reasons. First, there were 0 autonomy concerns. We weren't making changes to systems, and there was a broad agreement that no one was abandoning these volumes on purpose. Second was the number of volumes. We knew this was a place that we could demonstrate measurable savings, both in terms of dollar and time. And then third, we had an on-premise policy to replicate, so the behavior wasn't new. Our flow is pretty much the same as what you saw, and honestly, if the automation had existed back then, we would have used it rather than build it. But if you're looking for a place to start automating cost optimization, I highly recommend you check this one out, especially with the ability to create snapshots. Though I've yet to hear of a single one being restored, it's a good way to build trust in automation and save some money along the way. We must have been cosmically aligned or something, because we also looked to volume conversions next. For us, it was mainly IO1 to GP3. There was definitely a little bit more concern here, because we were going to make changes to the system. So this required us to do some more education. We used metrics to show teams that GP3 would more than meet their system requirements in most cases. And we also had to let people know that not using GP3 hadn't been a design decision. It was new technology. It simply hadn't existed when they were deploying their systems. The automation approach is more aligned with that rules-based approach, in that this automation only runs in accounts where teams have agreed to opt in, and it only runs against resources that teams have agreed to optimize. This lets teams that are doing all of their updates through pipeline keep their environments clean, and ensures that we're aligning with testing timelines and things like that. Now, the immediate concern here was that we were going to limit our savings by allowing teams this latitude. But that's mostly mitigated by the fact that the reporting is agnostic of how you choose to implement. Whether you solely use automation or perform every single update yourself, what's important is that you align with your leader's timeline for getting the work done. With this automation, for the resources that it does run against, after updating the volume directly, it also loops back and updates undrifted stacks. This further helps build buy-in because you're not creating tech debt for teams to clean up later, and you're also ensuring that it doesn't just pop up on the report again the next time the system is redeployed. Finally, we follow everything up with an email, letting teams know what work was completed and what work, if any, remains. All right, so this set us up to go after the big one, EC2 rightsizing. Now, we knew we had to tread carefully, and we had to get this right, because another team had made an attempt at rightsizing with a different tool's recommendations, and it was pretty disruptive. We are confident that we could do this with a compute optimizer for a couple of reasons. One was simply the trust that we had built in this, both the automation and the recommendations in our previous efforts. And two was the ability to customize those recommendations. For our first pass, we set the highest threshold for both CPU and memory utilization headroom, letting teams feel comfortable that they had room to grow. We also excluded some instance types that weren't compatible with agents on our base build. The first run at this was pretty simple. We looped through the recommendations, further refined them to low-risk options with no architectural changes, generated an email with an approval link for the managers, and then executed approved changes during our standard change window. And I think I had about 3 approvals through the system. So once again, we had to take to the teams and try to figure out what we were missing. Getting buy-in for this required us to adapt to design and resiliency standards in our org. This was things like identifying boxes that needed to be sized identically for load balancing purposes, creating different patterns for different environments or different resiliency tiers, and allowing an opt-out option for teams that maybe have vendor software that had specific requirements behind it. This was definitely a heavier lift, but what it allowed us to do ultimately was shift from an opt-in to an opt-out approach, providing greater savings. Now, what I haven't stated explicitly, but I hope you've heard through all this, is how key communication is. And I want to stress how critical it is in this space to establish and to adhere to a communication pattern. For us, it looks something like this. Inform, often more than once. Then open the door for feedback. Don't go in assuming that you know why an unoptimized decision was made. When you do take action, make sure you're transparent about what's being done with that feedback. Teams need to have confidence that you've heard them and that you understand the potential implications of whatever decision is finally made. For our organization, this has also been aided by the implementation of a cost champion program. I have a really small team. There's 4 of us. And so getting this scale of work done, we had each cost center owner appoint a champion or 2. And we meet with these people on a bi-weekly basis. We educate them about new opportunities. We tell them about new processes, change to reporting. And more recently, and my favorite, is they've started coming to us and educating us in the community about optimizations that they've actually found. They trust us. Their teams trust their knowledge of their domains. And those 2 things combined let us get far greater reach than we could have on our own. And along that journey, we've managed to see a 27% monthly cost savings. Just as important to me, if maybe not to my boss, is the cultural transformation that we've achieved along the way. Teams, as they become more educated about these optimizations, are starting to shift left and incorporate them in their design phases, which is allowing FinOps to become a part of how we work, rather than the extra work it seemed to be initially. That partnership is so key in building trust to making that happen, and it ultimately leads to the teams being more likely to accept new optimizations and new automations. And all of this combined provides the foundation for our leaders to make data-driven decisions that thread the line between cost optimization and the 100 other priorities that cross their desks every day. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that we have some purchase commitments, but we've kept a modest baseline to this point, and that's been an intentional strategy. We didn't want to commit ourselves to resources that were maybe oversized or entirely unnecessary. But now that we're reaching a much better state, we intend to look to this in 26 as a big lever to control our costs. So I want to invite Mary up onto the stage to tell us more about some developments in that space.
Perfect. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you so much for the insights and the stories. Hi, everybody. Have a key question for you. What do you do when you have different types of databases running across your environment? You want to optimize your cost, and you want to do it fast. From this week, you can purchase a database savings plan. Thank you. This is one of the most exciting launches we have at this reInvent. We saw a lot of excitement already in the news. My name is Mary Nachimov. I lead the savings plan purchase experience at AWS, and overall, I'm just obsessed about creating simple experiences for technical, complex products. Today, I'm going to show you, basically we'll go through an introduction of what are database savings plans, then we'll see how these savings plans will apply to your database services usage, and lastly, I'll show you how to purchase a database savings plan with our own native AWS tooling, like Savings Plan Purchase Analyzer and Savings Plan Recommendations. Can you raise your hand again who used these tools before? Okay, perfect, great. So you can utilize your knowledge to purchase the new database savings plan. And if you never purchased a database savings plan, don't worry, after this talk, you're going to be an expert and you will be able to teach other people how to purchase a database savings plan. Okay, so let's start with the basics. A savings plan is basically a dollar per hour commitment for a long-term period. You can purchase, for example, $1 for 1 year, and in exchange for this long-term commitment, you will get a discount pricing. It's the easiest way to start saving in your AWS environment because it doesn't require any architectural changes, and the best part is, after you purchase it, it automatically applies to all the eligible usage you have in your environment. So you don't really have to do anything after you purchase. You just monitor the success of that, then you can repurchase more and more as you have consistent usage in your environment. A little small history lesson about savings plan. Today, we have all these types in our environment. We launched Compute and EC2 savings plan in 2019. SageMaker came out in 2021. And this week, as I said, we're really proud to introduce database savings plan, so 2025. the database savings plan gives you up to 35% discount. It's a 1-year commitment, and it's no upfront cost, no upfront payment, which means that you're going to pay for this on a monthly basis. It's very easy. All this information is also in the UI, so you really don't have to memorize it. The UI will guide you through the purchase experience. Okay, this is one of the key slides that a lot of our customers are curious about, what actually the database savings plan will cover. So we have 9 types of database savings plans services that it will cover, like RDS, Aurora, DynamoDB, Elastic Cache. You're welcome to take a picture. As you can see, the serverless has a higher type of discount. So this savings plan is actually encouraging you to modernize and move from instances to serverless. Once you do that, the savings that you will get from the same purchase will be actually higher because it will cover the serverless types. After you purchase the savings plan, it will start to apply to your usage. So in this example, we show that there is Aurora serverless with 35% discount, Elastic Cache, and DynamoDB. Once you purchase the database savings plan, it will start to apply to the service with the highest discount. So in this case, 35% on serverless Aurora. Once it applies to that, it will trickle to Elastic Cache and finally to DynamoDB. In this way, it maximizes the savings plan you get from the purchase because it applies to the highest discount first. So you say, I have all these different services running. How much should I buy? How should I decide what to buy? You can start with a conservative purchase of 50% coverage. It's a great start. So if you have no savings plan currently in your environment, you just start with something and you start covering 50%. In this case, we're covering all of the Aurora and most of the Elastic Cache. You can then move on and maximize your savings. So this is a watermark line of this is the max savings you can get from savings plan purchases. Because if you go above this line, you actually don't have enough of on-demand to justify a savings plan purchase. That max savings, we actually in our tooling will help you to find that watermark line, and you can build up to it with small purchases over time, or if you have an environment that is always growing, you can start from max savings and just keep purchasing more and more as your usage becomes consistent. Okay, so lastly, before we jump to the demo, I want to show you the workflow that our customers do for all their savings plans. First, you analyze your environment, and you use your recommendation or purchase analyzer to decide on which one to purchase. You add it to the cart with a few clicks, you purchase, and then you start monitoring it with coverage and utilization reports. Coverage and utilization reports will show you how much of your on-demand is covered and how much your savings plan is being utilized in the environment. Lastly, after you review your purchase in the reports, you can, again, do the same thing, use the tools to analyze a new purchase, repurchase, and just see your coverage grow over time. With that, I'm really excited to show you a demo on this topic. So let's do that. Once I'm in the billing cost management, I'll scroll down over here, and there's a savings plan area, and we have all these pages, overview, inventory recommendations. They supported all the savings plan we had until now, and now they support also database savings plan. So if you used anything like this before, you can just continue building upon your knowledge and use the same tools. I'll start with clicking on recommendations. Here I see all the 4 types of savings plans we have: compute, database, EC2, and SageMaker. I'm going to click on database, and I'm going to see that it's already selected for me 1 year and upfront. So that's the offering, as you can see here. And I have a selection on based on the past. So here I need to select the look-back period that most likely are going to be reflecting my future, because we're going to find that max savings waterline based on the historical usage patterns. Let's take a look at what I have for the last 30 days. So I'm going to click here on View Details, and I'm going to see a visual chart that will go over and to explain how we found this max savings number. So in this case, I see that my recommendation is $2 per hour, and it will save me around $300. It's very low. In red, it's the on-demand usage. So you can see that we were testing this feature before reInvent, and we spin up a lot of database services up and down to see that everything is working correctly, so you can see that usage. But since I don't have a lot of things in the last 30 days, the recommendation is really low because it's targeting the consistent usage. So in this case, I want to modify it, and that's why we have Purchase Analyzer. If I click here, I'm going to Purchase Analyzer. You can also start from Purchase Analyzer if you scroll down here and click straight to Purchase Analyzer. Here, you see the same kind of selection. I have the 4 types of savings plan. I'm going to click on Database, and I need to select all these things here. So the analysis level payer will take all the usage across all the linked accounts, and we will build a recommendation on top of that. If you want to focus on one of the linked accounts, you can also click here, and you will have a linked account selection. Once you select that, 1 year, no upfront, no selection over here. And here I'm going to focus on an area where I had a lot of usage. It's actually started on the 28th, where we had more consistent usage, which is also my birthday. So I really like to select this date. And up until the 4th. Here you have the flexibility to select any look-back period in the last 60 days. So it's more flexible than the recommendation. This is actually a simple way to think about it. This is a superset of anything we generate for you in the recommendation. So recommendation is a good starting point for you to see like what is available, but then you can go to the analyzer and really modify many things and have a lot of simulations. So in this case, I'm going to select 28 until the 4th. The next selection here is the recommendation, where it finds the max savings waterline, or I can also do custom. Custom, I can enter any number, so maybe the waterline mark is $10, I can enter $5. So let's start with the recommended amount. Now, since I clicked on this, what it does in the background, it takes every hour in my look-back period, it collects all the services that are eligible for database savings plan coverage, and it starts to look for, okay, which dollar amount will give the maximum savings for this type of usage. In this case, you can see that we went from $2 to $28 per hour, because now I selected a short period of time with a lot of consistent usage. And that's my estimation right now of what I'm going to use in the future. This will give me 14% of savings, and I can also take a look at my coverage and utilization. So coverage, right now, I don't have a savings fund purchase, so I'm actually starting from very low, from 0. And then I'm going to reach 100% coverage for this purchase. You can actually go over and see hour by hour. There is I can see that there's a small amount of coverage because we did purchase a tiny savings plan just to test that it works. So you can see that here. So you can see hour by hour what's the coverage, and same for utilization. So here I see there is some peaks and troughs in my environment, and at some point my savings plan is not going to be utilized, which is okay. Still have 76% utilization, so I can narrow it down, or I can just take this into account. Okay, this is my weekend drops. I want to see what I'm going to optimize with my weekend drops, since it's a yearly commitment. In this case, I can go here, click on custom, and let's do $15 and see what. Maybe I'm not ready for the max savings commitment. So I'm going to click on $15, run analysis, and now it's going to do the same thing. It's aggregating all the hourly usage, and it's starting to apply the $15 per hour each hour, and then we'll see the result for that. Okay, I decreased it by 50%. So now I see that I have more on-demand uncovered, so the red part is on-demand, and I have some coverage, which is the blue area. If I click on coverage, I'll see that now I'm not at 100% coverage anymore. I actually reduced it to an average of 65% coverage, and maybe that's a good start for me. I just want to purchase one, and then I'm going to grow my coverage over time as I see my usage grow, and I'm getting more comfortable with savings plan purchases. Lastly, the utilization. is going to be 79%. Again, because we did testing, we have a lot of ups and downs. Usually for customer environments, you will see more steady usage for database services. So that's how after you run a few simulations with all these options, you can add it to the cart and continue to purchase the savings plan. After you purchase the savings plan, you can also go over here. You have utilization report and coverage report. In utilization report, I want to show you exactly how to find the database utilization. So once you go over here, you will click on savings plan type, and you will select database. Apply. In this case, we have a very tiny purchase, and it's 100% utilized. And I have more details down below on how exactly each of the database savings plan is utilized. So that after you purchase, you can track your utilization. When we look at customer environments, many times it's 100% or 99% if you have a little bit of going down over the weekend. And you can also click on coverage report. Over here, when you click on service, you need to select all the database services, and then you can see exactly what coverage you have. In this case, because we have a very tiny amount of savings when purchased, we have, going to look at the last 7 days. So it's not a lot of coverage, but the cool thing here is I can see the coverage per different services. So it gives you a lot of insights of where the savings plan is going to cover and which services it's going to cover for you. So you track it over time, and then you go back and you start purchasing the savings plan again.
So we just want to thank you all for coming today. And one last thing we wanted to talk about before we end the session is just to thank you all for the feedback you give us as we build new FinOps tools and cost optimization features. We use that feedback that you send your TAMs and log as product feature requests in our roadmap planning and as we plan out the next set of launches and features we do. That feedback is really crucial for us to make sure we can help you optimize your AWS spend as effectively as possible. And honestly, it's a really fun job because we get to come to reInvent and other conferences like FinOps X and places and bring a lot of new free savings tools. I think we have maybe some of the best jobs in the world that we get to build tools to help you save money. So it's a lot of fun, but it really depends on quality feedback from all of you as you look at your cost and as you implement your own cost optimization programs to let us know how we can serve you better. So please provide feedback. We put an email alias up here on the screen for you. If you would like to give us feedback on any of our products, tools, or experiences you have, feel free to just reach out and let us know. We love talking to customers. It's the highlight of our day as we go through product management activities. And thank you also on behalf of all of the developers and engineers back home that work tirelessly on all of these features. The road and lead up to reInvent is very difficult sometimes as we have to scramble to get savings plans working and everything. And there's a lot of people behind the scenes that come together to pull this together, especially across so many different service teams. So on behalf of all of those engineers, thank you so much. Your usage of these tools validates and is rewarding for us as we see savings roll in and usage for these products and tools. So thank you so much. And again, we'll be available afterwards for questions. If you'd like to stay after and learn more about any of these services or Bonnie's story about how they implemented and really moved the needle on saving 27% off of their cloud bill. Really exciting story. So thank you all.